guys, this is Gloria from Scraps of Life. Welcome to the tutorial portion of my video series using the Graphic 45 Love Notes collection to create this book box and matching album. If you want to see the full walkthrough of the box and the album, check the link below so that you can see the whole walkthrough and some talking points about the project. This is just the video tutorial on how to create the actual book. This is the book that we will be assembling. We'll be assembling the covers and the spine and the base of the inside pages. If you want to see the walkthrough for this project, you'll click the link below and it will take you for a walkthrough where I show you every page and flip out. But for the tutorial, I just wanted to kind of basically show you that it's a book with accordion hinge spine that holds 9 pages, so it has 3 hinges and there are 3 pages attached to each hinge, and that is the book that we will be making, just the base of it. This is not a full tutorial, just we'll be making the base of it today. So let's get started. Okay, this is the little book that we're going to make, and after I got this finished, the base of it finished, I decided that I would go ahead and show you a little tutorial about how to create the cover, how to attach the hinges, and then how to attach your pages, and then how to design and assemble your pages. It seemed a little complicated for me to try to explain with photos, and frankly, photos take forever to edit and post. So I decided to do it, once I got this built, I decided to go back and build it again so that I could show you step by step how to do that. So let's get started with that, and you can follow along and build it, and then you can make a book in any page style and with any paper that you like once you learn how to build the base. That I often do books that are taller and narrower. This is sort of this is the size I would normally do with a spine here, but I wanted to do one that's this way, that opens and has pages that are 4 inches by 6 inches instead of the other way around. So this is the main project that you'll be seeing in the other part of the video. I'm going to do it again with a little bit different colors, just because I didn't want to make another black one. So I have another project in mind, so I will build the base of that one to show you and then decorate that one later. So this is the one that you're seeing decorated in the rest of the video. But we're going to put this aside for now, and I will show you how to build this base. Okay, the first thing you're going to need are 3 pieces of chipboard. I use sort of a heavyweight, I think it's like a 0.5 or 50 point chipboard. This one is white on one side and craft on the other. Makes no difference what color you use. We're covering it up. But you need 2 pieces cut to 4 1/4 by 6 1/4. That's the front and back cover. And then you need a piece cut to 4 1/4 by 1 3/4. And I will post on your screen, you'll see the dimensions written out so that if you didn't hear me or wasn't clear, they'll be written out. So you'll need 3 pieces. It'll be your front cover, your spine, and your back cover. Now we're going to cover those or wrap those with paper. I use sort of a medium-ish weight cardstock for that. And so we're going to splice 2 pieces of cardstock together to make our wrap for our cover. So you will need 1 piece that's cut to 6 1/4 inches by 12, and one that's 6 1/4 by 5 1/2. And we're going to splice those together to make a piece that's 6 1/4 by 16 1/2. The easiest way to splice paper like this together is to take your ruler, and I have this mat on my table that has a grid, which makes it so easy for me to measure things. So I just line this paper up with the grid so it's even at the top and the side the best I can. And then I lay my ruler down so it's at 1 inch in from the side. And then I just draw a line here. and take my adhesive. I like to use score tape. I think this is probably 1/2 inch score tape. And then I have a piece of, this is a 1/4 inch because I didn't have any 1 inch score tape. Okay, and then I just burnish that down. Peel these off. And then taking this piece, making sure you have the right height of it. It's 6 1/4. Place that on the sticky part, overlapping those two papers. Line it up at the top and butt it up against the pencil line you drew. Stick it down, and you would just burnish it as best you can. Really burnish it down so that the seam almost disappears. And now you have a piece that's 16 1/2 by 6 1/4. Okay, now we're going to take our pieces of chipboard. You can see once we lay our pieces of chipboard on here, we're going to have about 1 inch all the way around, which is exactly what we want. And so I do the same trick to keep my pieces straight once I get them on the cardstock, is I line this up again with the grid. If you don't have a big grid mat like I do, you can use a smaller, like a 12 by 12 that comes with maybe your scoring board or something comes with a mat like that. But I have this great big one that's for quilters that covers my whole desk here. So again, you're going to lay your ruler and draw a line at 1 inch on the left-hand side, and then do it again so that you have a line at the top that's 1 inch from the top. This is the inside, so it doesn't matter, the pencil won't show, but now you have a guideline to help you line your pieces up. So we're going to flip these over and put some adhesive on the back. Again, I just like to use score tape. I like to put sort of a little frame of score tape around the outside edges. And then in the middle. I know some people like to use wet glue for this, but I find that it often can make the paper or cardstock buckle, so I use score tape. So you'll do this for all 3 pieces. Okay, once you have your score tape all on your pieces of chipboard, you want to go ahead and burnish that, because sometimes chipboard has a little bit of a problem with adhesive, and the adhesive wants to pull off. So I really like to burnish mine down before I peel the backing off. Okay, you want to take the first piece, and you want to line it up with those lines that you drew. Hopefully my head's not in the picture. So line it up and just stick it all down. Next, we're going to add the spine piece, which again, burnish down the adhesive and then peel your little backing pieces off. Now, we want to make sure that this is about 1/8 of an inch from the cover piece. Now, if you can't eyeball 1/8 of an inch, or you don't really know what 1/8 of an inch looks like, just take a ruler and lay it at the top. You see here I've lined this edge up with about this mark here, the 9-inch mark on the ruler, and then I go over to 1/8 of an inch and kind of look at that. If you need to, you can make a little mark with a pencil. And then line that up with the top line that you drew and kind of make sure it's even all the way down. If you get this too crooked, then your book will open and close crooked. So you try to get the best you can. Some people like to do this by putting 2 pieces of chipboard together and putting them in between, because 2 pieces of chipboard this thickness is about 1/8 of an inch. I just usually eyeball it. I really don't like measuring things. Okay, then we put the last piece of chipboard, which is your other cover, your back cover. And again, we're looking for about a 1/16 of an inch gap. So if you line this up with the 7 inches and then mark at a 1/16, not a 1/16, I'm sorry, 1/8 of an inch. Hope I said 1/8 of an inch here too. So it's 1/8 and 1/8, not a 1/16. Although if you're making a book that's smaller or the paper's thicker or slimmer, you can get away with a smaller channel. But because I use cardstock wrap and cardstock pages, I tend to make mine 1/8 of an inch here. So mark it and then take your last sheet, lining it up here with the top. This is where that seam was, where you spliced the 2 pieces of paper together. We're just going to go right over that. Okay, and you can burnish or brayer or however you like across the back. Maybe burnish where that seam is again. Now I like to keep that seam where it's going to be on the back cover of my book instead of the front, just in case anything weird happens. It's in the back, not the front. Once you have your covers down and they're secure, then you'll want to take whatever adhesive you're using, and I run a strip across the top, the length of the chipboard pieces. And down the side. The bottom. And the other side. Now, because I want the corners to look mitered and not have so much bulk here, I want to cut this off at both edges, all 4 edges. So all I do is kind of eyeball and cut that corner off so that it's a little bit of paper left, but not a whole lot. There are some tools out there that you can buy to help you do this without cutting too close or too far away, but again, I just eyeball it. And so now your book will look like this. Now we're going to wrap your chipboard around with this paper, this sort of tannish paper that I'm using here. Now on our real sample, I used black to wrap it, to wrap the chipboard. Okay, let's take this liner off. And then I like to take my bone folder and run it right along the edge of the chipboard all the way across, and then kind of bend it like this a little bit. as I fold it over. And I mostly do that because right here where the papers are spliced together, we have a double thickness of cardstock for 1 inch right here. And sometimes that makes it a little hard to bend. So once I have it, I burnish it down. Sometimes I burnish along this bottom edge or top edge, whichever it is. Burnish here again where that splice was. I do the same to the side. Here, you see how a little bit of paper is sticking out here. I just take my bone folder and sort of tuck that down as I run it across the whole length. Once again, I just pull this down snug. Burnish. And last section. You can see here that I cut my paper a little close. I have a little bit showing. That will be covered up with the decorative paper, or if it does show and bother, you can run a little marker or something to cover that up. Now, this is the spine, and we need to bend our covers forward, but I don't want the paper to tear, so I will gently, very gently push in that channel in the middle, just gently. I'm not putting very much pressure on there at all. And then just as gently, I bend this forward. It just gently stretches those fibers so that your paper doesn't rip or tear. Because the last thing we want to do is have this rip here. And I can tell you what to do if that does happen. Do the same for the back. Again, you can see that splice where we splice the two papers together. Once we cover this with decorative paper, you're not going to see that. So now we have our book, front cover, spine, and back cover. Okay. Now, if by chance this does rip, all you need to do is paint this with a little, say, Mod Podge or glue, something that will keep it from tearing further and fraying. If it gets really bad, you could wrap this with a piece of decorative paper to cover it up. It does happen, but I try really hard to be gentle with it so that it doesn't tear. By bending very gently and gently scoring, you stretch the fibers here in the paper so that the rip doesn't happen. But it does happen sometimes, and it's not the end of the world. You could always cover it up with decorative paper. Okay, now we have our covers wrapped so that the chipboard isn't showing. We have a nice smooth edge all the way around with no naked chipboard edges showing. Open it up. Make sure that you know where the top is. Because I have a seam here, I know that this is my back cover, so this is the top. And so what we're going to do next is create our hinge for this, and we'll need a piece of cardstock cut to 3 7/8 by 6 1/2. Now 3 7/8 is a little shorter than our height of our book, and it's going to be shorter than our 4 by 6 pages, because if you make the hinge too tall, it tends to show, and I don't want that to happen. So I always cut my hinge a little shorter than my page. So my page is 4 inches tall, so I cut my hinge piece at 3 7/8. And so now we need to score this. And this is where it gets a little tricky sometimes for people, so I'm going to show you how to score this. I have my scoreboard here. We have our piece of paper for our hinge that is cut. Our hinge that is cut to 3 7/8 by 6 1/2. And we're going to lay it in with a 6 1/2 inch piece across the top, and we're going to score at 1, 1 1/2, 2, 2 3/4, 3 1/4, 3 3/4, 4 1/2, 5 and 5 1/2. Okay, so I don't know if the camera is picking it up, but you have a 1-inch section, 2 1/2-inch, 3/4, 2 1/2-inch, 3/4, 2 1/2-inch, and a 1-inch. Each of these 1/2-inch sections fold together to make your hinge. So what you'll do is pinch that in between these 2 1/2-inch sections, and as that raises up, you'll mountain fold that, and you'll be valley folding the pieces on either side, so that you have the hinge will kind of pop up, I like to say. So you'll do that for all 3 of those sections where you have 2 1/2-inch sections together. And you can see how that is going to make your hinge, 3 hinges. So you have a 1-inch section at the front, the hinge, 3/4 of an inch gutter, the hinge, 3/4 of an inch gutter, hinge, and then a 1-inch section at the end of it. So what you need to do in order to make this work and fit in your book is to glue these hinge pieces together on the back. So you'll flip, we have your 3 mountains, you'll flip this over now, and where the 2 1/2-inch sections sort of make a valley now, that's where you'll put your adhesive. And I like to use score tape for this. So I just put score tape down the first 1/2-inch section, and burnish that. My tape wants to get away from me here. Burnish that, and then peel off your liner and go back again and squeeze those sections together, those 2 1/2-inch sections, and that will make your first hinge. Okay, flip it back over to the back where the 2 1/2-inch sections make another valley, and put adhesive again. Pinch them together, flip it over, and do it for the last section. Just make sure you're getting your adhesive between on 1 1/2-inch section, and then gluing it to the second 1/2-inch section. Okay, so now we have our hinge piece. We have 3 hinges. And I like to fold them so that it kind of breaks the fibers, because this is where your pages will attach, and you want your pages to be able to fold back and forth freely. So I kind of fold these guys. Okay, so now you have your piece that can be attached to your book, and your pages will attach to these hinges. Now, I already cut a piece for the spine. The camera stopped working, the phone stopped working for a second, so I had to redo this section. So at any rate, you need to cut a piece of paper here that is 4 1/8 tall by 1 3/4 wide. You want it exactly as wide as the piece of chipboard that you have here, and just a little shorter than the height of your book. So 4 1/8 by 1 3/4. I did ink with some Distress ink, some brushed corduroy around the edges of my paper. You don't have to do that. You can pick a different color. It doesn't really matter. But I just like to cover that hinge piece, or the spine piece, because my hinge is a little short. I just want a little bit of decorative paper to peek through. You could just splice with little bits or however you like, but it's just a little piece of paper. So I just cut it and cover that whole piece up. And now we want to put our hinge on, and we want to make sure to center it top to bottom. So there's a little bit of that decorative paper peeking up at the top and down here at the bottom. And we want to make sure to center it directly on that piece of decorative paper so that your hinge isn't too far over on either side. Okay? So we're going to flip this over to the back, and we're going to put adhesive all along the back. And again, I just use score tape for that. You could use whatever adhesive you like. I tend not to use wet glue just because I just don't want it to buckle or warp. Wet glue is more forgiving if you don't get it placed down just so. Wet glue, you can move things around. It's a little more forgiving. So if you're a beginner and just starting out, go ahead and use your favorite wet glue for this. Just be a little more sparing with it so that it doesn't buckle your paper. Okay, once you have the whole back covered with adhesive, you burnish that down and then just peel. Okay, now again, you want to really make sure that you're centered top to bottom and that your hinge piece is, that your 3 hinges are centered nicely on that center piece. The decorative paper really does help line that up. Once you have it down, just burnish everything really well. Okay. Now, we will again go gently in that channel where the cover meets the spine and gently score in there again because you've just added another layer of cardstock. Now I can see I got my hinge on there just a tiny bit crooked, so I'm going to have to be careful when I add my pages that I don't get them in there too crooked. Okay. I just keep gently moving this around, stretching the fibers gently. And you can see here I've got a tear. I told you it happens. Usually what I do is just take a little bit of glue and rub that on there and then let that dry, and it will usually keep it from cracking anymore. And since this glue doesn't dry shiny, you shouldn't be able to see it. But at the end, when I start to decorate the front cover, if it still is very noticeable, I'll just cover that with paper and no one will ever know it happened. I haven't used this particular cardstock for covers before, so I wasn't sure how it would react to being stretched. You can see I'm starting to get a crack here too. It happens. Just put a little glue and let it dry. Now, I'm using an 8x8 pad of Imagine paper by Graphic 45 for this little book. I'm not really sure what's going to happen with this book. This is really just an example to show you how to build this, but I will probably finish it out. I haven't used Imagine yet, and I have a lot of it in my stash. When I purchased it, I just didn't have time to use it, so now is as good a time as any. You can use the 12x12 or the 8x8. This is 8x8, and I just cut up some strips from the Create Yourself print that has hot air balloons and clocks and gears on one side, and then it's got blue butterflies with clocks on the other. And that was the little strip that we had here in the beginning. So I cut 2 pieces of the same paper, the Imagine Create, to 4 1/8 by 6 1/8, and that's what's going to go here to line our front and back cover, and it also covers this tab where the hinge is attaching. So for this, I usually just use a tape gun of whatever variety you have. It seems to hold very well when I make a book like this. I also go back in with a little wet glue and just hit the corners, because sometimes corners want to pull up. So I just put a little bit of wet glue in each of the 4 corners to keep it from doing that. As the book is handled, sometimes those corners come up. We just kind of center that inside. Burnish it. Oh, a little glue squirted out. Okay, so that covers the inside front cover. And we'll do the inside back cover. One thing to make sure of is keeping your mind on what is the top and what is the bottom so that you get your papers oriented right side up. It's not very much fun when you get going and realize you've got something upside down. And it happens. Okay. So this is my back, inside back cover. Burnish. Okay. Now, sorry guys, my phone keeps dying on me. I think I didn't have enough storage space or something, and it just keeps dying. So let's try this again. Okay, we have our paper on our front and back cover, and now I want to put a little strip of paper in these two gutters, these channels between my hinges, and that piece should be cut to 3 1/4 tall by 5/8 of an inch wide. And I'm just using some wet glue to attach those guys. I don't always do this because normally my gutters are only about 1/2 inch or 1/4 of an inch, so I don't normally bother, but because these gutters or channels between the hinges are a little wide, they're 3/4 of an inch, I would like to cover that up with paper. So that is what the inside will look like with your messy covers all covered up and your hinge attached and ready to go to have pages. Okay, so the next thing to do is to add pages to the hinges. There are lots of ways to do this, and I vary how I do it. It just depends on the book and the style and how I want to go about it, how I want to build my pages. This is probably one of the easiest ways I've found to do it. So I'm going to show this to you, and then you can probably figure out other things or learn another way to do it. But we have 3 hinges, so we have 3-page sets. And there are 3 pages for each set, so it'll actually be 9 pages or 18 sides to this album. You can see with the one that I've already finished how many different pages are in there. It looks really complicated, but it isn't when you break it all down. So what you need for that is you need to cut 3 pieces to 4 inches by 6 inches. And then you need to cut 6 pieces that are 4 by 6.5. You want to score one edge of those at 1/2 inch so that you have this tab going on. Okay? Now, what we need to do is make a page set that contains 3. You need one that's a 4 by 6, and you need 2 that are the 4 by 6.5 with that tab that you scored. And putting those together in a configuration on the tab here, the hinge tab, will make your first page set. And so you could kind of do that any way you want. You could put the first 6-inch piece first, or you could put that second. It really is up to you. I like to put one of the hinged pieces, not hinged, but tabbed pieces first. So what I will do is laying it down so that the little score line is on your right. To make the tab, you fold that tab over and put your adhesive or glue, whatever you like to use, I'm brave and use tape. Glue is a little more forgiving, but it takes longer to dry and can sometimes be messy. So I'm just going to use score tape and hope for the best. So really burnish that down. And then what you want to do is laying it so that that tab is kind of sticking up, mirroring this hinge. And so you want to center that. The hinge is a little shorter, you can see. So you want to kind of center that on the hinge. I butt it right up against the hinge, and I kind of eyeball it out here to make sure I'm straight. And then I just fold that hinge down over that tab that I made. And so you can see now that I have one page on. Okay? And this hinge is still here. And so what I'll do now is I'll fold that hinge down and take the 4x6 piece. This doesn't have a tab on either end, it's just the 4x6 piece. And I'll put adhesive on the actual hinge. I try to go towards the top of the hinge so that it's not going to show down here or get sticky down here if something weird happens or it gets crooked. We'll pull that off, and we want to lay this so that this all lines up here. Okay guys, my phone is not working properly and it cut out and I didn't know, and I lost the whole part of how I was trying to explain to you how to put the pages on the hinges. So I don't want to have to remake this book yet again. So what I'm going to do is I made an extra hinge piece that would go in the middle, like I explained before, and I'll show you how to put pages on this hinge rather than remake the whole book again. So we'll just kind of put this here. I have some double-sided tape on the back to kind of hold it in place. And so this would be in your book with your 3 hinges sticking up, and I'll explain again more fully how to add the pages to the book on these hinges without having to remake this whole thing. So let's cut our paper again and we'll get started one more time. The first page of our book we'll attach to the hinge with the tab that we made. This is the 1/2 inch tab that we scored at the 6.5 side. We'll put adhesive on this little tab. And then what you'll do is you'll butt this piece of paper with your tab folded and the sticky side facing your hinge, and you'll center that on your hinge like this. And then fold your hinge down over it. So you have your hinge with page stuck to it. You want to take a piece of the 4x6. This does not have a tab scored on either side. It's just the 4x6. You will put adhesive this time on the actual hinge. This is what I was trying to explain when we cut out the last time when my phone died. Take this off, and now you will line your page up with the previous one. Now with your hinge sandwiched inside, you'll stick that piece down. Okay, so now you have the hinge sort of sandwiched inside here. And when you cover it with decorative paper, you'll never know that this is in there. You'll never see that, okay? Now for page 3 of the first hinge set, you'll take another piece of the 6.5 by 4 with the score here at 1/2 inch. And you'll fold that tab and add adhesive to it. Now you'll line this up with the previous page once again, making sure to keep it all straight. and attach. So now you have 3 pages attached to the first hinge. The hinge is in here, and then this is just tabbed attached to the page in front of it. That's what I did in the book, just like that. And you'll just repeat that for the next 2 hinges. So for the next hinge, you will put the tabbed piece onto the hinge, so the tab and the hinge are together, and then you will add the next piece, the 4x6 piece, and then another piece with a tab. So let's go through that one more time. So this is hinge number 2. You'll take the piece that's 6.5 by 4, and the score is here at 1/2 inch. Fold that. Add the adhesive to the little tab. And you'll line that up with the hinge so that the hinge is sticking up here. You will butt that right up against, kind of make sure it's centered with the other pages, but butt it right up against that hinge. Fold that hinge down and burnish. So now the page is attached to the hinge. See? Now you will take a piece of the 4x6. You will attach tape to the actual hinge this time. This is hinge number 2 of the hinge piece. You fold that hinge over. It's free, but you fold it over. And the adhesive is on this side here. You will line those 2 pages up and sandwich that hinge in between and just burnish. So there's page 2. The hinge is here. And you'll take another of the 6.5 by 4 with the score at 1/2 inch. To fold that. Attach adhesive to that little 1/2 inch tab. Line that up with the other page so that the tab is folded in. Okay, and now you have your 9 pages attached to your 3 hinges. And this, you could still use it. I put it in a book. I can use it later for another project. So let's put that aside, and I'll show you the book. Kind of pick up where we left off when the phone stopped working. That we have our 3 pages for the first hinge, and 3 pages on our second hinge, and 3 pages on the third hinge. Now, in order to create a book and decorate this, all you need to do is decide how you want to attach pockets and flaps and whatnot to your pages. So what I have done with the black version of this is just created things like that. So this is the front, inside front cover, and I've just made a pocket. To do that, you simply measure the height and the width, and you want to add 1/2 inch to 3 sides to make a tab where you can attach this pocket to the page. And let me show you how to do that. Is I've cut this piece of paper to 5 1/4 by 3 1/2. So it's 5 1/4 by 3 1/2, and I've scored 1/2 inch at the top, at this long side, and here. Okay, and that will go here. So what we'll do then is we'll put adhesive on 2 sides and the bottom, or actually it goes like this, so the top and the bottom and the back side. And what I like to do is to keep it from getting too bulky is, you see where the lines intersect here at the corner where I scored at 1/2 inch, I just cut that corner off to make an angle. Then I have the adhesive, I fold on the score lines and burnish that. Now that pocket will go here. And because I added these tabs to kind of give it some extra height, it's easier to slide things inside of it than if I just glued a flat piece of paper directly. It allows things to slip down in here, like I have the tag sliding in the pocket here. And so you would just remove your adhesive. Remove the adhesive, and then stick your pocket. Sorry, I have a cord here that's kind of getting in the way. Now we have a pocket. You can put a tag or a photo mat or whatever you want. And that's how I create all of the pockets and flaps for the book. So I'm not going to do a tutorial on that because you can kind of set your book up any way you like, but I will go through the book that I made for the Love Notes collection and kind of explain a little bit how I did that. So I showed you that you can make a pocket for the front, and then there's a pocket here. So this pocket is a pocket that something will slide into. And so all you need to do is measure the page. Now this page is 4 by 6. So you would measure a piece of cardstock that was 4 1/2 by 7, because you're going to score it 1/2 inch on these 2 sides and the bottom to make those flaps that you glue to the actual page. And that is the equivalent of page 1 is just a page, but I glued another piece of cardstock over it to make this pocket. And then the next page, I made a pocket just like I did on the front. And some pages are plain. I don't have a pocket or anything on them. And when I want to make a flap that's a fold out, all you need to do is measure how long you want it and add 1/2 inch as a tab to attach to the page. So once this is covered with decorative paper, you will never see that tab. And so a pocket, and then here I made a flap that lifts up this way. And again, you just measure, the page is 6 inches, so you measure 6 inches, measure how tall you want the flap, add 1/2 inch and score it so that you can make a tab here. So pocket, and then this is a mirror page. So what I do when I create these page sets is I create what I want for the 3 pages, and then I just do it again for the next set, but I may flip it around a little bit. So here, instead of having a top load large pocket, this one has a flap with a pocket the same as here. Okay, and then when you flip it over, this is where I have that top loading pocket. So that way your book looks cohesive, but it doesn't get boring. Okay, so here I have another side pocket, and here I have a flap with no pocket, just a pocket with no flap, and so forth. Here I made a flap, and then I made sort of a special flap. Again, I just measured what I wanted, added that tab, and attached it. This will be covered with paper. You'll never see that. And so this one, I measured a 4.5 by 6 half-inch tab. So it's 4 by 6, but then I folded the bottom up to make sort of a little tuck spot here. So here is the flap, and so forth, and attach. I hope that makes sense to you, and I hope that you have fun making a book like this. I hope you enjoyed the walkthrough of the Love Notes book, and hopefully I'll be back at another time with a finished book with the Imagine paper. So have a really good day, and thanks for watching.